Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Rare Disease Spotlight, Immune-Related Kidney Diseases. As a reminder, today's webinar will be recorded and shared after the event. My name is Ryan Woolley, and I am the Director of Public Education here at the American Kidney Fund. In the webinar today, we'll review rare kidney diseases and take a deep dive into a specific disease called complement 3 glomerulopathy, or C3G. Complement-mediated kidney diseases are rare kidney diseases caused by genetic or acquired problems in controlling the body's complement system, which help fight infections. The American Kidney Fund will be launching 2 new campaigns with educational information on 2 types of rare kidney diseases, C3G and IgA nephropathy, or IgAN, to help people better understand these conditions. We'll have more to come on both of these diseases, so be sure to sign up for our e-newsletter. And for today's webinar, I'm excited to be joined by a guest expert who will share more information about complement kidney diseases and answer your questions. And today's education content is made possible by Novartis. And before I go ahead and introduce you to our guest experts for today, I want to go ahead and go over some housekeeping items. So if you're watching live, we encourage you to join the conversation. Let us know you're here in the comment section and type any questions you have in the Q&A feature on Zoom. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion. And if you want to use the closed captioning feature on Zoom, you can go ahead and turn it on in your navigation menu. And at the end of this webinar, we will include a link to a brief satisfaction survey in the chat. You can also click continue on the page in your browser after the webinar ends to get to the survey. We kindly ask that you take a few minutes to complete it. Your honest feedback will help us continue to make our programs the best they can be. And finally, if you're a health professional and believe that your accrediting body may offer you credits for attending this webinar, simply email us at education@kidneyfund.org. While this webinar is not accredited, we'll be happy to send you a certificate of attendance after today's session. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. We're excited to be joined by Dr. Laura Mariani. Dr. Mariani is a nephrologist and clinical researcher at the University of Michigan Division of Nephrology. She completed her medical school training at the University of Michigan and subsequently completed her internal medicine residency, chief residency, nephrology fellowship, and Master of Science in Clinical Epidemiology at the University of Pennsylvania. She's currently an associate professor in the Division of Nephrology at the University of Michigan. And she has a primary clinical and research interest in observational studies in glomerular diseases, and she is involved in several clinical NIH-funded research studies in kidney diseases. Dr. Mariani, please go ahead and say hello to our listeners.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation and for taking time out of your day to join me today.
Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Mariani. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with your presentation and then save some time at the end for Q&A.
Okay, great. So I'll start off today. I'll just list, these are my disclosures here, which include a couple companies that are developing therapeutics in the area of rare kidney disease. Okay, so today, here's what I'd like to go over. So we'll start off first with just some general discussion of the kidney structure and function. I think that's really just to explain essentially for the diseases we're going to talk about today, kind of where in the kidney are they causing the most problems. Then we'll talk about rare causes of kidney disease, and then focus specifically on one of them, C3G, and go through how it's diagnosed, what we know about what causes this disease, and then kind of look a little bit into the future about new discoveries in this area and how that, I hope, in the future is really going to change how we treat these conditions. Okay, great. So let's get started off here. Let's start with the kidney structure and function. So many of you may already be familiar with this, but I thought just to like kind of fill everyone in so we're all on the same page, I'll start here. So most of you know that we have 2 kidneys, most of us. They actually sit pretty high up in your back. So you can see here, they kind of tuck almost right under your bottom rib all the way in your back, where they can get blood supply directly off the aorta. And they get a huge amount of blood supply. So after the brain, kind of the kidneys get the next amount of blood flow. And as those blood vessels go into the kidney, they branch into smaller and smaller vessels until finally they form this really delicate tuft of tiny, tiny blood vessels called the glomerulus. And the glomerulus is really kind of the start of the action of the kidney. So this special little tuft of capillaries, blood comes in here to be cleaned. Fluid kind of seeps out into this space and heads off through these little tubules, where the body knows how to make kind of the perfect urine. So all that urine kind of starts here. And actually, one cool fact about the kidney is that about 150 liters of fluid a day flux across these little filters. Obviously, we don't pee 150 liters a day. That would be a full-time job. So the kidney, as that fluid is traveling through the tubules, the kidney reabsorbs that fluid. It reabsorbs the things we need, and gets rid of just the waste products and things that we don't need. So this is what it looks like on kind of an artist drawing. On a kidney biopsy, this is what that glomerulus looks like. This really delicate tuft of blood vessels that's surrounded by the beginning of this urinary space. And the rest of this are those little tubules that are working hard to make the perfect urine. Okay, so on the next slide, I have just a picture of a healthy glomerulus again. So again, you should have these little capillaries that are wide open, easy for the blood to pass through. You have these specialized cells that form the filter of the kidney. And the important one here is the podocyte. And when you look at it under the microscope, a healthy glomerulus should look like this. Should be lots of white space, a few cells that are kind of supporting those blood vessels, but not a lot else. And here's a picture of an unhealthy glomerulus. So you can see here on the left that this glomerulus, there's just too much pink and purple. And what that is just the immune system is attacking this glomerulus and it's filling it up with cells. In this way, the pathologists that I work with, they kind of like to call this one having a cauliflower appearance. And you can just see there's no open space here where those nice blood vessels should be. The one on the right has a similar problem. There's just too much pink here. And this glomerulus here is developing a scar, where we think that scar is being laid down and this filter probably isn't going to be able to be rescued. Okay, so what does the kidney do? So as it gets all that blood, I think most people know that its primary job is to get rid of waste products and clear medications you're taking, clear any toxins from the blood. That's a sort of primary job. But because it sees all this blood, it has a number of other jobs as well. So it regulates all of our electrolytes. So things like our sodium or our salt levels, our potassium, our calcium. It also regulates how much fluid is in the body. So it's one of the cool things about the kidney that you can drink 1 liter a day or you can drink 20 liters a day and the kidney can handle that. It knows how much fluid you've taken in and how much it needs to take, how much it needs to get rid of and how much it needs to save. And it can really adjust to that dynamic load. It also really is important for some hormones to regulate your blood pressure. So if your blood pressure is dropping, the kidney is probably the first one to sense it and has an important role in controlling blood pressure. One of the important waste products it gets rid of is acid. So just by being alive and eating, you generate acid, and the kidney is really good at getting rid of that. It also does a couple of sort of lesser known jobs. It makes some hormones that are really important for making red blood cells, and it plays a role in hormones that affect our bone strength as well. The kidney has just a lot, actually quite a lot of jobs. Okay, so on the here. Okay, so what about that glomerulus? So the kidney has all these different jobs and it has all these different cells and compartments, but that glomerulus, where the magic of the kidney kind of starts, what is its primary job? So that's that little tuft of capillaries where the blood is coming through. And the way I like to explain is that's really kind of the strainer. So as the blood comes in to be cleaned, the good things are supposed to stay in and the kind of dirty water is supposed to go out. And when you have rare kidney disease, like we're going to talk today, The primary structure in the kidney that's being damaged to start, we think, is the glomerulus, this very initial filter. Okay, so how do I, as a nephrologist, or really any physician, how do we tell if the kidney's doing its job? Okay, so the first thing I look at is something called your estimated glomerular filtration rate. So now you know that glomerular, that refers to that glomerulus, that filter of the kidney. So this estimated glomerular filtration rate, or eGFR, you may have seen on some of your lab reports. This is really telling me how well we think the kidney is cleaning the blood. And so how that test works is we measure creatinine in the blood. This is a toxin that's produced by the muscle. We all make it, and the kidney has to clean it out. So we take that creatinine measurement in the blood and we plug it into a formula, and we get an estimate of your glomerular filtration rate, or your GFR. So there's a different formula for adults and kids. They're listed here for your reference. Normal GFR is about 100. It kind of works out nice because you can say normal kidney function is 100%. And as the kidney starts to lose its ability to clean the blood, that's what we call stages of chronic kidney disease. And it's really where we're estimating the current kidney function to be. So for example, if someone says, I have stage 4 CKD, to me, that's not really a diagnosis. That just means right now they have somewhere between 15 and 30% of normal kidney function. So this chronic kidney disease, or CKD, to me really just describes how well the kidney is cleaning the blood. And we have these sort of buckets that we put people in. Okay, what's the other way we tell if the kidney's doing its job? As we talked about, those filters, those glomeruli, they're supposed to hang on to good things. And one of the good things they're supposed to hang on to is protein. So you really shouldn't be peeing out the protein from your body. And if you are, I know that those filters are damaged. So actually, even if the creatinine and the estimated GFR is okay, if the person is spilling protein into their urine, I'm worried about those kidneys. So how do we find out if you're losing protein in the urine? Well, you can just do that simple dipstick, pee in a cup and put a dipstick in it. But that just kind of tells you is there protein or not. I actually really like to know how much protein someone's filling. So you can have people do a true 24-hour collection where they go home and they collect their urine for 24 hours and keep it in the fridge and bring it back. This obviously is not super convenient. So you can also just ask people to pee in a cup, and we can kind of estimate how much protein they're losing in a single day. And we know that no matter where your kidney function is, if you're spilling protein in the urine, that's a sign that those glomeruli are not doing their job, and we're a little worried about them. Okay, so that's my intro to kidney kind of structure and function. So let's talk about rare kidney disease. So in the United States, this is an organization called the U.S. Renal Data Service. And basically they keep track of everyone who reaches actually kidney failure in the United States, meaning either they entered dialysis or needed a transplant. And overwhelmingly in the United States, the two leading causes of kidney failure requiring either dialysis or transplant is diabetes and high blood pressure. Diseases that primarily affect the glomerulus, you can see those here, glomerulonephritis, it's a lot fewer patients. Obviously, this graph is hard to look at. This is a lot of people starting dialysis every year where their own kidneys have completely failed. And the only way for us to help them at that point is to either get them a new kidney or to provide dialysis. All right, so what about our rare kidney diseases? So our glomerular diseases, I think a good definition for that are protein spilling kidney diseases, where the main problem is in that glomerulus, that filter of the kidney. And there are actually quite a lot of ways that that filter can be damaged. So first, your immune system can attack it. There are sometimes that actually we don't really know exactly what's happening to that filter, but we know it's being damaged. There are some people that are born with genetic variants that seem to cause that delicate structure to scar over time or to just not be intact. And then sometimes that filter is damaged by other causes of kidney disease. So actually diabetes and high blood pressure also damage that glomerulus. And there are many, many other diseases that can happen in the body that ultimately lead to damage of that glomerulus. How do we then actually give it a diagnosis? So I would say glomerular disease is kind of a big umbrella term for any condition that's harming those filters of the kidney. And there are many different things that can damage it. So in adults, typically a kidney biopsy is required. So if I have a new patient that comes into me, they're spilling a lot of protein in the urine, I think that glomerulus is damaged. For an adult patient, I almost always recommend a kidney biopsy to see exactly the pattern of injury. In children, there's fewer ways that the kidney is damaged. And so often pediatric nephrologists, they will start treatment before a biopsy and hold off on the biopsy unless they need it for later. When you try to look up causes of glomerular disease, often what you'll get are disease names that were given to those diseases by kidney pathologists. So it's really the pattern of injury that we're seeing on the kidney biopsy is how a lot of these diseases got their name. So I'll give you some examples on the next couple slides. Okay, so first, a couple other terms. So glomerular disease, that's the umbrella term for any disease that's harming those glomeruli. A lot of times the way that shows up is people are spilling protein in their urine. And so that sometimes is referred to as nephrotic syndrome. That's where people are picked up because they're spilling a lot of protein. And in an adult, like I said, they get a kidney biopsy. And on that biopsy, we can see a variety of things happening to that glomerulus filter. So for example, you might get a diagnosis that says minimal change disease. And that means when they looked on the biopsy, it was actually just this one cell type, the podocyte, that had changed. Everything else actually looks pretty healthy. FSGS, this is another kind of a little bit of a mouthful, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. That means that there's a little bit of scar in one of the filters. Membranous nephropathy has a different pattern. This is where we see the immune system depositing these antibodies sort of against a specific part of the kidney. So we see these little deposits kind of gumming up that filter. On the next slide, you can see just two more examples. So IgA nephropathy, another cause of glomerular disease, and the pattern of injury is yet another way that the biopsy looks. So in this case, we see those same things, some immune deposits, but they're in a different place. So they're a different type of deposit and they're in a different place out here in the mesangium. And lastly, C3G, so C3 glomerulopathy. Again, we see a different type of immune deposition in the kidney in a different pattern. And so that's what happens with a kidney biopsy, that we sort of look at it with some very different special stains and we can see what part of the immune system, where in the kidney, where in the filter is it being damaged. And that's where we get to these disease names. All right, so let's take a look at C3GN. So before I start here, I will say C3GN is very rare. So probably there's actually not good sort of overall population estimates, but it's probably one in sort of 1 to 3 million people. So if you took all glomerular disease, do you remember we looked at that plot of kind of common kidney diseases like diabetes and hypertension? Glomerular disease was really small. C3GN is a tiny, tiny little slice of that pie. So this is a rare version of rare glomerular disease, but a lot of what the patients go through, I think, is for C3G is common experience across all of our glomerular diseases. All right, so first, how is it diagnosed? So I would say that, typically, because this is a glomerular disease, all of these glomerular diseases have kind of overlapping symptoms and lab abnormalities. For C3G, I would say the typical onset is in the 30s, although there's a wide range. And patients may notice either dark or foamy urine, and that's because blood and protein is in the urine when it normally wouldn't be there. You can also have high blood pressure. Sometimes you have swelling. You might get just picked up on blood work that you have that reduced GFR or sometimes low complement levels in the blood. And I plopped this table in here not to show you kind of all the details, but just to say that because this is so rare, it is hard to assemble enough patients to really say confidently what the sort of usual experience is. So for example, this is a major center. This is data from Columbia You can just see that they had 87 people to report on. So this isn't like, you know, cardiovascular disease or other things in medicine. We have lots and lots of people that we can learn from. For C3G, it's really, really rare. But you can see in this group, it's just what I said. This is sort of how people showed up. Okay, so how is this one diagnosed? Like all of our glomerular diseases, really to know that the reason someone's spilling protein, you have to look at the kidney biopsy. And so essentially what we have people do is they come in, they lay on their stomach. We use an ultrasound typically to guide a biopsy needle right next to the kidney. We take a very small piece of tissue that actually looks like this. So it's about a little bit bigger than kind of the width of a pencil lead. And if you lay it under a microscope, you can actually see these little tuft of capillaries. These are the glomeruli. And so we typically take 3 different pieces, 3 different passes of that biopsy needle, and we do special stains by our renal pathologists. And what we can see is when we first look under it, under light microscopy, we can see that those filters, again, they just have too many cells. There are all of these immune cells, these purple dots that really shouldn't be here. And the pathologists will call this membranoproliferative pattern. That's the generic term that they use to describe this pattern. When they do these other special stains, we start to see that the immune system is actually depositing material in the filters of the kidney. And the thing that it's depositing is this C3. And we can see it on this stain, and we can see it in these little sort of smudges here. So this is how it's diagnosed. It's this pattern of injury that we see on the kidney biopsy. I'm going to add one layer of complexity, and this is true for all of our glomerular diseases. Many times the pathologists give us this pattern of injury. So they'll say, on the biopsy, I see membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis. That means the glomeruli have too many cells in there. There's probably many underlying processes that can get you to that same pattern of injury. And that's a common story across all glomerular diseases. So for people that have IgA nephropathy, there may be more than one way to get that pattern of injury. If you have minimal change disease, there may be more than one way to go there. And MPGN, or membranoproliferative glomerulonephropathy, is the same thing. So we're talking about C3G here, but you can see C4G looks the same. There are autoimmune diseases like lupus that can look like this. There are cancers that can look like this. So this pattern of injury actually could result from a variety of different underlying things. And this probably explains why C3 is so rare. So seeing MPGN isn't that common, and then seeing C3 causing MPGN, even more rare. Okay, so what causes this disease? All right, so I'm happy to say that there has been a ton of research over the years where we have learned a lot about the complement system, and it's really starting now to translate to better understanding of this disease, other glomerular diseases, and I hope soon will translate to therapies. So the complement system is really interesting. So our immune system has kind of multiple lines of defense, and the complement system is one of those. So this part of the defense system, I would say its primary job is to kind of recruit cells or recruit like our inflammatory cells to either attack a pathogen or help heal tissue. And sometimes the complement system actually can help break down like a bacteria or something that it needs to like break apart that cell. So it can be, it's a helpful system. It can be activated a few different ways. So one way is if you have developed an antibody against if you develop an antibody against a pathogen, the antibody can recognize that pathogen and say, hey, complement, come on in. I need your help here to like get rid of this thing. Complement in and of itself can actually find these carbohydrates, these sugars that are on pathogens and activate that way. Or the complement system is kind of a roving like monitor. And if it bumps into a pathogen or injured tissue, it can activate there as well. So it's good in that it's kind of always at the ready, but that means it also sometimes can be overactive in ways that are harmful to our own tissue. So that's the complement system. It's really complicated. It has a lot of different pieces. You can see in this chain that, C1 starts and C3, then C5, and there's all these pieces to it. So there's many, many pieces of the complement system. So it's really complicated, but it's sort of always sitting there ready to be activated. Okay, oops. Okay, so there's a lot of ways that this complement system we've learned over time can get disrupted. So sometimes people are born with genetic variations in their complement system. So like I said, the complement system is kind of always sitting there, always ready to be activated. And because it's always active, it has some natural breaks as well. So some ways that can go wrong is you can have genetic variations where the complement system is just too active and has too many go signals, or the stop signals aren't strong enough and the complement system is activating and harming tissue, harming our own tissue in the kidney or other places where you just have lost that break. And that can happen because of a genetic variation, or the body can start to develop antibodies, which normally should protect us from the outside world, normally should be protecting us against viruses and bacteria. But instead, those antibodies are now starting to recognize our own systems, like the complement system. So you can have antibodies that are activating the complement system. You can have antibodies that are removing the brake. And the question is, where did those antibodies come from? Why aren't they doing their normal job of like going after bacteria and viruses? Well, sometimes just those antibodies, they just get misdirected and they start to recognize our own tissue rather than attacking the thing they're supposed to. So there are infections that can trigger this. Sometimes there are cancers that produce antibodies that are attacking the own body. And then the definition of an autoimmune disease is really this loss of tolerance to our own tissues. So sometimes our immune system just gets reprogrammed to attack our own systems in the body. Okay, so there's, the complement system is really complicated. There's lots of different pieces. And so unfortunately, there's a lot of different ways that this system can be disrupted from its sort of normal function. Oh, sorry, like too many times. Okay. So there is testing that you can do for this. So if you have a patient that has an overactive complement system, by which I see in the kidney biopsy, I see that C3 being deposited in the kidney, causing inflammation and damage to those filters, there are some ways we can test to see what we think the problem is. So there's genetic testing where you can test for variants that have been found previously to cause an overactive complement system. You can also do functional testing. So you can sort of take the blood out and test is the complement sort of more active than it should be, and what piece of the complement seems to be overactive. If you think someone has one of these other causes of developing these antibodies like cancer and autoimmune disease, there's additional testing you can do. For example, if you suspect someone has lupus, or you suspect they have one of these blood cancers, there's other testing you can do there to look for that. There's a variety of blood testing that you can do to try to figure out what's going on with the complement system. Okay, so how does understanding the complement system, what do we think that means for patients with C3G? Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that having a rare version of a rare disease is not easy. So I would say it's a pretty common experience for glomerular disease in general, and definitely for patients with C3G, that it takes a long time for them to figure out what they have. So, there are about 14,000, there are about 14,000 nephrologists. But if you can imagine, for an ultra rare disease like C3G, there's probably many of them that have just seen a handful in their career, maybe people who haven't seen any yet. There are kind of few glomerular disease specialists that really see a lot of patients with glomerular disease, and we might have seen a lot more. So it may take some time to get to someone who's really seen a lot of this. We talked at the beginning about how patients are diagnosed. A lot of those symptoms are kind of generic, that swelling, the high blood pressure, the low GFR, and it may take some time before someone gets to a nephrologist where they get a biopsy and really get an answer of what's damaging their kidney. For many of our glomerular diseases, underserved populations have higher risk, and so it might take longer for them to get into appropriate care. I think the bigger problem for all of our glomerular diseases is that really right now, there's really only one rare kidney disease, IgA, that has FDA approved therapies specifically for that condition. So we just don't have a very good bench in terms of therapies to try. Most of the medications that are tried are repurposed. So those are drugs that are approved for other autoimmune diseases, other cancers, and we use them in these types of kidney diseases because we don't have a lot of options. And so that leads to a lot of unpredictable response and kind of high side effect burden. It's nowhere near where any of us really want to practice medicine. Okay, so what is the current treatment for C3G? So, so there are sort of kidney protective measures that we recommend no matter what type of kidney disease you have. So for example, good blood pressure control, low salt diet, trying to keep a healthy weight, all of those things we think are protective for the kidneys. Because you remember the kidneys, you know, they're those delicate blood vessels. So things like smoking are really, really hard on them. High blood pressure is really hard on them. All those good things that we think protect the kidney. And then a variety of immunosuppressive medications have been tried. So again, this is back that article that the group from Columbia published their experience with C3G, and you can see a lot of different medications are tried. A lot of them, like I said, borrowed from other places. So for example, mycophenolate mofetil, calcineurin inhibitors, those are medications that are used in our transplant patients. So you can see and this is true of kind of, I think all of us who have seen C3G patients, we've tried a lot of different things. And unfortunately, there's a high proportion of patients. So here, about 40% of this 87 people, despite trying a variety of different things, had loss of their kidney function over time. And I think that just shows you just the great need we have in this area for better, sort of more targeted therapies. I think eculizumab is kind of an interesting therapy. You know, it actually targets the complement pathway. So this is really appealing for C3G, that if we can have something that interrupts that actual complement system, it might be more effective than trying to just quiet the immune system down as a whole. But where we are right now is kind of, like I said, we don't have specific therapies for C3G. And so a lot of the progress that's going to be made in this field is in research and potentially clinical trials. So I put this complicated figure up here because I think I'm going to look at this as a glass half full. So again, this is the complement system, those three ways it can get activated: classical, lectin, and alternative. And you can see it's this cascade of events that ultimately get down to the complement system doing its job. And this may look really daunting, but the good news is there's a lot of places it can go wrong, but that also means there's a lot of places that new therapeutics could intervene and potentially be helpful. And so the little stars on here are all the places where new therapies are being tested. And so just to give you a little bit of hope, these are clinical trials. This is not an exhaustive list. I just wanted to make sure it's sort of readable on this slide. But you can see there are a lot of ongoing clinical trials for patients with C3GN. And what I like about it is you can see the targets are different targets. And so in that complicated system, you can see how maybe intervening at different places might be better for certain patients over others. So factor B, for example, is a brake, C3 is a gas, like maybe intervening at these different places is helpful. This is also good to know, this NCT, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, that lists clinical trials going on that have been registered that are going on for any number of kidney diseases, or actually even non-kidney diseases. So, so if you ever want to know the details of a specific clinical trial, this is a great place to go. It tells you who's eligible, who the sponsor is. It tells you all sorts of good information. So I just put those in there just for reference, but also for you to know about clinicaltrials.gov and what that NCT number is. Okay, so so that is my tour of kidney function, its jobs, glomerular disease, and C3G. So I'm happy to take questions before I wrap up with kind of my take-home points.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mariani, for all this helpful information, and hopefully people had a lot to take away from it. So we'll open up to questions. I know I saw a few coming in, and we had a bunch of questions that people submitted when they registered for the webinar. So we'll start with those, but please feel free to continue submitting questions as you have them, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so the first question here for you, how do kidney problems affect the liver, the pancreas, and how the bladder function?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's honestly one of the reasons I love taking care of kidney disease patients is that obviously, in my totally biased opinion, I think the kidney is completely central to kind of the health of many organs. And they talk back and forth to each other. So, for example, patients that have liver dysfunction, as the liver starts to fail, the kidney starts to fail. Same with patients with heart failure. If you have heart failure, you often develop kidney problems as well. So they're very sensitive to each other. There are some diseases specifically that do affect multiple organ systems. So, for example, you may have heard of people with polycystic kidney disease. There are some patients with polycystic kidney disease get cysts in the kidney and the liver. So it kind of varies disease by disease in terms of kind of which other organs are involved and how many of them are involved. But you're right, they definitely do kind of interact back and forth. For pancreas, I think the most common overlap is diabetes. So diabetes, we know, is a condition that affects the pancreas. The pancreas has trouble making insulin, and over time, that's hard on the kidneys. So it's sort of a complicated answer to there's diseases that affect more than one organ. It depends on which disease it is.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. All right, next question here. How can I determine if care from a nephrologist, primary care, or other physician or specialist is most appropriate?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously we rely on our primary care physicians to diagnose that very early problem of kidney disease. So most often, patients more often get their blood work or their urine checked by their primary care doctor. And if that GFR is low or people have protein or blood in their urine, that's a sign something's going on. And I think it's worth going to a nephrologist. The nephrologist then, I think, can really help you understand what is the cause of that reduced kidney function and the protein or blood in the urine. I would much rather have people get referred early to a nephrologist as opposed to a primary care doctor trying to kind of manage it on their own. And it may be there are many patients that I say, okay, this is probably related to your diabetes. It's very early. I'm going to give recommendations to your primary care physician for sort of what they can do to manage it. But in patients that have advanced kidney disease or need specialized therapy like immunosuppressants or need a kidney biopsy, any of those things, those really should be handled by a nephrologist. If you have an ultra rare disease, because that field is so kind of subspecialized, in the same way I would say if you had a kidney transplant, you should see a transplant nephrologist, right? If you have, intractable kidney stones, there are nephrologists that are specialized in kidney stones. So I think it's worth, if you have one of those ultra rare glomerular disease, I think it's worth at least once seeing someone who sees a lot of glomerular disease. And it varies by nephrologist, and your nephrologist will be able to tell you, be like, oh yes, I see a lot of this. I feel comfortable managing it versus I really don't see this a lot. Like, I think it's worth you getting a second opinion. And that doesn't mean you have to change your care. That just means like getting that opinion from someone to say, yep, like you guys are on the right track. There's not a lot new going on, or they're doing the right things. You don't have to transfer your care to that person. They can just give you extra advice.
Got it. Thank you. And kind of following up on that too, you talked about trying to find a specialist or nephrologist who has specialty in a certain condition or has seen other patients. Do you have any advice for how people should go about identifying that person?
Yeah, so I think some of it you can just search from the internet, like a little bit of like, usually on people's bio, it kind of says, oh, I have an interest in glomerular disease or something like that. Often that'll be there. I think actually patient advocacy groups are really helpful at this. So for example, NephCure Kidney International, they're a patient advocacy group that specializes in rare glomerular diseases. They actually have done a lot of outreach already to find specialists that are interested in this area, have expertise, and can help connect you to people in your region. And then other causes of kidney disease have the same thing. So there are, there's the PKD Foundation for polycystic kidney disease. There are lots of patient advocacy organizations that I think are really good at kind of helping direct people to kind of those specialists.
Great, thank you. Okay. What is the best medical test to detect early kidney disease?
A great question. So in my opinion, it's actually the urine. So people often what I find is people will get referred to a nephrologist when their estimated GFR starts to drop. So they'll get that blood test, they'll say your estimated GFR has dropped. And then when I look back through the chart, it'll look like many years before the patient had protein in their urine. And that really isn't normal, right? Healthy kidneys should not spill blood and protein into the urine. So to me, that's the earliest sign. And for patients with diabetes, I think primary care doctors really know this as part of their algorithm. So they're always checking for protein or albumin in the urine. But I would much rather see someone when they're just starting to have protein or blood in their urine before those filters have picked up enough damage to have a dropping GFR. So that to me is the kind of earliest sign. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the kidney has so much backup that you can lose about 90% of your kidney function without having any symptoms at all. You know, we ask obviously people to donate a whole kidney, that we think that that's safe to give up 50% of your kidney function. So a lot of times people will come, they'll be very late and they'll say, how can this be? I feel fine. I don't have any symptoms. I don't notice anything. And it's because of that thing about the kidney that has so much backup.
And then somewhat related to the question about testing, in children, can some of these be, I think the rare diseases that you discussed earlier, can some of them be diagnosed with genetic testing?
Yes, that's a great question. So there has been a huge amount of research in better understanding the genetics of kidney disease. And you're exactly right. In children that present with glomerular disease, it's probably a little more common that it has a genetic cause than adults, which makes sense. Like if it's something you were born with, it's more likely the disease shows up at a younger age. So you're right. There are now panels, genetic testing panels that you can do in kids and in adults. And some of them are very specific for certain kidney diseases. So you're right. In some kidney disease, especially in kids, you may not need to do the biopsy. The genetic testing might be able to give you an answer.
Great, thank you. We've got several different questions here around treatment options for C3G and what trials there are ongoing right now. So if you could talk a little bit broadly about what's available.
Yeah, so treatments for C3G, like I mentioned, right now, I think a lot of people, because we think in general the immune system is sort of overactive. Right now, what we're kind of doing is borrowing from other autoimmune diseases and trying it in C3G. Unfortunately, we don't really know ahead of time who's going to respond and who's not. And that's where research is really helpful, right? So there are, lots of ways you can participate in research, but there are, various places that are, for example, asking patients just to give bios, like their blood and their urine, so we can kind of bank it and understand. But that's what really needs to happen, that we need to have for each individual person. We would love to know, is there some blood test or something we could mention and say, okay, you look like you have C3G, and it looks like this part of your complement system is a problem, so we can match you to this therapy. We're a ways away from that. So right now, I think the general thought is to try, sort of general protective measures for the kidney. Depending on the patient, I do try some of our immunosuppressive medications that I use in other autoimmune kidney diseases. And then if we have some of that specialized testing, either the genetic testing or the functional testing, if they give me a hint of exactly what's going on, there may be other medications that, for example, shut off antibody production that may be helpful in this disease. But the real promise, I think, is in the clinical trials. So in that table that I had before, I don't know if you want to go, I can go back to the one slide maybe. So here are some of the ongoing clinical trials. And these are new therapies largely that are really sort of specifically targeting the complement system. The complement system is obviously really relevant for C3G. It may be relevant in other glomerular diseases as well, like IgA nephropathy and membranous nephropathy. So some of these medications may be relevant for more than one kidney disease, But these trials I put up here are specifically for C3G. So, and you can see they're targeting a variety of things. Now, if something is under a clinical trial, that means we don't know yet if it's safe and effective, right? This is a clinical trial. We're trying to answer that, not we, but the community that's running this trial is trying to answer that question. So, there's all these different phases of studies. So you can see, for example, this is proof of concept trial. It's a very early phase trial, whereas phase 2 is a little bit further along. The controlled trial is sort of further along. So these trials kind of move stepwise through until ultimately they get to the FDA where they get approved as safe and effective therapies that we can actually prescribe.
Thank you. And we have a resource on our website, and hopefully someone on my team can throw it in the chat, or we'll email it out to everyone that's joined this webinar. But we've got a resource where you can take a few survey questions and find out what trials are available that you might be eligible for. So we'll make sure you get access to that. And there's also some information too, just about clinical trials in general, if you have questions about what it is and how to join one. All right. So we have a question from someone who has C3G and received a transplant, and their team has been open about the kidney disease coming back. And so they're wondering if you have any data about how often or how likely it is for the disease to come back.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is true for C3G, but actually for several of our other glomerular diseases, that if the fundamental problem is the immune system is attacking the kidney, you can imagine that if you put a new kidney in, the immune system could do it all over again. Now in transplant patients, they're already on a lot of immunosuppression to prevent rejection of that organ. So some of that therapy that's sort of preventing them from rejection may prevent the autoimmune disease from flaring. C3 is so rare that unfortunately, I don't think we have good, blood tests or other things that can really help us predict who the disease is going to come back in and who it's not. So I don't have I wish I could say, oh yes, 50% of the time it'll come back, 50% it won't. I think we really don't know at this point. So, so obviously, they'll watch really closely for any sign that protein's coming back, and may add some additional therapies at that time if it looks like the condition's coming back.
Okay, thank you. Question here, what are the top 5 lifestyle habits that can increase the likelihood of kidney failure? And I guess with that, if you could maybe also say the reverse, or what habits might help to delay kidney failure?
Yeah, so I tell all my patients with kidney disease that, the kidney isn't very good at, the kidney is not very good at, well, actually, it can't do it at all. It can't regenerate. So if you say we're born with 2 million of those filters, that as those filters start to drop out, the remaining filters that are there, they tend to kind of overwork and try to pick up the slack. And so sometimes that can go even faster. So I think in general, if you have kidney disease already, I don't want any other insult to the remaining filters at all. And so things like that are, I think smoking is one of the big ones. It's really, really hard on the blood vessels of the kidney. So, so smoking is bad for the kidney. Stopping smoking would be great. Good control of your blood pressure. So, we don't want that pressure kind of pounding away at those delicate vessels. So good control of blood pressure. There are some blood pressure medications in particular that are really helpful to protect the kidney over the long term. So those are medicines like lisinopril or losartan. We generally think that particular type of blood pressure medicine might help protect the kidney over the long term, no matter what type of kidney disease you have. I think maintaining a healthy weight is important as well. So just kind of the bigger we are, that's kind of the more work for the kidney. And so probably in general, trying to keep a healthy weight and good cardiovascular health, I think is really good for the kidney. So those kind of general things are good. And then watching out for other things that other, physicians or things that might happen that might add damage to the kidney. So for example, there are certain medications that are hard on the kidney, things both over-the-counter medications and prescription medications. If you have kidney disease, medications have to be adjusted for your level of kidney function. So just reminding people like, hey, I have kidney disease, my GFR is low, is this medicine safe for me? Or is this the right dose for me? Just prompting them, I think, will be helpful. There are other things like if you get a CAT scan and get that dye is a little bit hard on the kidney. So that's not to say that like you can't get dye. It's just to say I want people to think about, is that the best radiology test for you if you already have kidney disease? So to me, it's all about like preserving the kidney you have. Like we said, the kidney has so much backup, which is great. So I don't want to like lose any of that backup for other reasons.
That's great. All great advice. Thank you. Somewhat related here, we've got a question. What are the benefits of taking SGLT2 inhibitors?
Oh, that's a great question. So SGLT2 inhibitors, this is a class of medications. You may have seen, like commercials for them. They are FDA approved. And they have an interesting story. So there are medicines that were initially developed for diabetes. So it was supposed to help people control their blood sugar with diabetes. And the way they work is they actually force the kidney to pee out a little bit of sugar. And when they did the big clinical trials, they found that the people who got SGLT2 inhibitors had a much lower risk of developing kidney failure. And so it turns out these drugs are probably protective for the kidney. And turns out that's probably true in diabetes, but that may be true in many other types of kidney diseases. There have been subsequent trials where they've tried those medicines in people without diabetes, but with other causes of kidney disease, and have found that those medicines are protective. So we're learning a lot more about that. We're learning a lot more about sort of why that is, because it was a little bit of a surprise, I think, to the medical community about why it was so protective, actually, to the heart and to the kidney. And it turns out like it's not just specific to diabetes. So there have been trials where it's shown to work in many diseases, including rare glomerular diseases. So you're right, there may be benefit to using these medications no matter what the cause of kidney disease is. And it's actually gotten a lot easier to get those paid for since those big trials came out that showed it's effective in people who have other causes of chronic kidney disease. Now, it's still not everyone. It's probably still, I think I still kind of rely on the evidence. So I still like to compare the patient in front of me to the ones that were in the trial where it was proven to be effective, to say how close are you to this kind of group of people that had this, to know that I'm giving you a medicine that actually has benefit for you. Because all medicines have side effects, all of them. And SGLT2 inhibitors are no exception.
Okay, thank you. I've got two questions here that I'm going to combine. Talking about one, are there clinical trials specifically for pediatric patients with C3G? And then also, has there been any differences in how medications affect children versus adults with C3G or some of these other glomerular diseases?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would have to go actually look at the inclusion-exclusion criteria. So if you go to that clinicaltrials.gov and like click on any one of those trials, they will tell you what the age limit is for those trials. I would say most trials in kidney disease, they start with adults and then they try to expand to kids, unless it's primarily a pediatric kidney disease. I know there has been a big push to try to allow participation of children in these clinical trials, so they aren't always left out from sort of novel therapies. So I don't know off the top of my head which of those trials are kind of moved into the space where they allow pediatric patients. It makes sense. We want to give we want to give children and their parents the opportunity to participate, but it is like, kids are not tiny adults. Their body is different. They handle drugs differently. And it is like a whole other design. So that's typically the way it works. And I don't know off the top of my head for all those trials which ones are including kids. In terms of response, I think you're right. There probably are some differences between kids and adults. So again, like all of our glomerular diseases, for kids, the genetic component may play a bigger role. And so my guess is probably that may impact your response to one or more therapies. We're not there yet. I would love someday, I think we're going to get to a panel of testing, both genetic and functional testing, that will say, okay, you have this combination of genetic variants, this combination of antibodies or other markers, and so we can match you to a therapy. And I think you're right that probably the therapies that will work best in children are probably a little bit different than adults, but we don't really know that yet.
Okay, thank you. We've got 5 more minutes left here, so let me go to one last question, and then we'll go through our last couple of slides. So we have a question here who says that none of her son's doctors have, they seem to be reluctant to do genetic testing for her son. And she was wondering if that would be related to the cost of it or insurance coverage, or if there's a certain reason that someone's doctor may be reluctant to genetic testing.
Yeah, you're right. So they used to be, all the genetic panels, they used to be really, really expensive. And it was kind of challenging to get insurance to approve them. That has changed over time. So as I think the technologies have gotten better, a lot of those kidney panels now are actually much cheaper than they used to be. So some of it may be financial. I would encourage you just to ask your doctor, like why, like, tell me what the barrier is. Is there something that I can do to help or whatnot? It may be that they don't think genetic testing is relevant for the specific condition, which, there are some kidney diseases I can think of where where genetic testing, we don't really understand how it plays a role and might not impact therapy. I think the argument I would make is that because there is so much research coming out and new things that are being discovered, even if it doesn't change kind of diagnosis and therapy right today, I think there's a chance that knowing what you have could be important for the future. Genetic testing in kids, I think, is an interesting question ethically because the laws and insurance sort of changed over time. I think some physicians are hesitant about doing genetic testing when they don't know if 20 years from now that child might have trouble with like life insurance or something like that. But I think this is a good place where like you as a parent should be able to make that choice. So I think that's like great to just say, tell me all the reasons you're nervous about this, or you've seen reluctant, like, so that you can help them and have an open conversation about kind of what you want to decide versus what they want to decide. I would hope any nephrologist would be happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's also genetic counselors too that people can you can ask your nephrologist to refer you to or seek one out who may be able to talk through how to have those conversations or just kind of the things to think about too when conducting genetic testing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes those panels come back and they're hard to interpret. And so that's a great place to have a genetic counselor on board where they can explain, okay, well, when the report came back this way, this is what they mean. So maybe helpful regardless.
All right, well, thank you so much for all of these answers to the questions that came in. And thank you for joining us today, Dr. Mariani. And I know we had a lot of information packed into this discussion. So before today's webinar, we asked Dr. Mariani to give us 2 of the most important things that you should know about today's topic and 2 things she recommends you do. So I'll pass it back to you to walk us through this last slide here.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks so much for the participation and the great questions. So 2 things I would remind you, and these are things that I hear a lot. So chronic kidney disease, to me as a nephrologist, that means you have signs of kidney damage. Either you're spilling protein or blood in the urine, or that estimated GFR is low. It's not really the same thing as a diagnosis. And what I always want patients to know is, why are my kidneys not working well? Which one of these many, many causes of damage to the kidney is leading to this chronic kidney disease? So to me, that's kind of a description of kidneys not working well. It's not really a diagnosis. For these rare kidney diseases we talked about today, including C3G, the kidney biopsy is the way to figure out exactly what's causing the damage to the kidney. and things to do. We just talked about this. I think it's helpful. Things have changed a lot. A lot of things that weren't possible before are now possible. So I would talk to your doctor about, if you have C3G, about whether additional genetic or functional testing could be helpful to guide treatment plan, either today or potentially in the future as some of these new therapies move through the development pipeline. And then I would also talk to your doctor or patient advocacy or maybe the American Kidney Fund about ways to get involved in research. So whether it's donating blood for genetic registries or observational studies where you just contribute your data, or clinical trials. This is how we're really going to move the field forward. And I hope in the end that, you know, that like a lot of patients will never, ever, ever meet a dialysis machine and will never need a transplant, that we'll be able to save those kidneys before they ever get to that point.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Dr. Mariani, and thank you to everyone who attended this webinar. Hope you got some useful information from us. And please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, or send us an email through kidneyfund.org to stay in the loop with any upcoming events that we have, and to get more information about our new education campaigns for C3G and IgA nephropathy. And before we close, just wanted to say, remember to complete the brief survey at the end of today's event. You'll see it in the chat, and then you can also see it pop up on Zoom in your browser web page. You can follow that link and just provide any honest feedback that you have about the webinar. It really helps us improve for future events. All right, thank you all, and stay well.